Story 1. Willing stupidity. Information is always within reach, yet people continue to believe lies and misinformation. Worse still, they often regurgitate this information. People need a healthy dose of skepticism. Story 2. Social media creates the false belief that everyone's insights are equal. If someone's perspective is lacking, it does not matter how loud it is. It remains lacking. Story 3. Male sexual assault is often portrayed as humorous in popular media, exemplified by the excessive number of prison rape jokes. Story 4. 40-hour workweek with an average of 1 or 2 weeks off per year. It is insane when you think about it. Story 5. Disposing of food because there is no profit to be made, and additionally, making it illegal to forage for edible waste. Story 6. The hoarding and concentration of wealth in the hands of a small group of oligarchs who exploit the labor of society. Story 7. The belief that you are entitled to anything and everything you desire as a way of living a life of ease and happiness is misguided. You are not guaranteed that at all. Take care of what you have, work hard for what you want, and be thankful for what you have been given. Story 8. Suicide among men is the second leading cause of death. Even men do not talk about their mental health issues. Break the stigma and help those men heal. Story 9. Churches getting involved in politics should have their tax-exempt status revoked by the IRS. Story 10. Bullying. Having low self-worth to the extent that you feel the need to hurt others, who typically have done nothing to deserve it, should not be considered normal. Yet, people discuss it as if it is an experience everyone should endure. I don't think we fully realize how harmful it is. Story 11. Immediate gratification. I started to mention debt, but that's primarily the result of our need to have what we want immediately. We are damaging our health, wealth, and even relationships because we have been led to believe that we can have anything we desire without having to work, save, and plan to achieve it. Story 12. There is a rampant disregard for the environment, yet we worry about cancer and various other diseases, while water contains perfluoroalkyl substances and microplastics that are found in nearly everyone's bloodstream. Just because we externalize environmental damage due to economic factors does not mean that the damage ceases to exist. Story 13. Obesity, sugar, and other chemicals in food are regulated, and the French and Italians are much healthier because of it. Story 14. That lying is okay. That white lies are okay. That lying to protect someone's feelings is okay. Lying breaches trust. A society cannot function without trust. Story 15. It is unacceptable to deny people affordable food and shelter to ensure higher corporate profits and market control. Story 16. Having respect for older people should be based on earning that respect. Just because someone is older does not automatically warrant respect. Story 17. If you are not working hard, then someone else is getting ahead of you. If you are not succeeding, then you are falling behind. In reality, being satisfied with what is enough is the secret to true happiness. Story 18. Plastic generation continues to rise, with tons produced daily, contributing to environmental degradation and affecting every living organism on a microscopic level. It is known to be toxic, taking thousands of years to decompose, and cannot be effectively recycled. It is important to understand that so-called recycled plastic contains only trace amounts of repurposed material and is often unstable. Around 5% of what is placed in recycling bins is actually recycled. The rest ends up in landfills or worse. We may criticize people from the 1950s to 1980s for their disposal habits, such as littering, burning, or burying waste, but on average, each person today generates significantly more plastic pollution than ever before. Story 19. Non-consensual circumcision is concerning as genital mutilation is considered acceptable for assigned male at birth and assigned intersex at birth infants. Story 20. Women and men often blame each other instead of focusing on the individuals who truly deserve criticism. People are considered innocent until proven guilty, but nowadays the opposite seems to be true, resulting in an increasingly dysfunctional society. Story 21. The way America does not prioritize mental health and fails to educate about it means we often learn through difficult experiences. Story 22. Men are being abused by women, and when they fight back, Both conservatives and feminists criticize them. We are expected to endure this in silence. Story 23. Consumerism. The infinite growth model. Fast fashion. Single-use items. Plastic. Driving cars everywhere. Laziness. Unhealthy lifestyles. Ultra-processed foods. Short, non-native monoculture lawns. It is difficult to choose just one. Story 24. Cheating in relationships is a common occurrence. People discuss it casually, and there are podcasts that encourage cheating, suggesting it's acceptable if a partner mistreats you. This mentality is weak and careless, as it's easy to find someone willing to play the role of a side partner. Story 25. Bashing men and acting as if they are disposable and unimportant seems to be a common trend, especially over the past decade. This idea that men are bumbling, misogynistic, useless creeps who need to be controlled or told what to do, or else they will ruin society and harm women, is simply not true. The vast majority of men are good, well-meaning people who contribute to society and would protect a woman from danger. We need men. Society would literally fall apart without them. Children are better off when they have positive male role models in their lives and fathers in the home. I love women. They are amazing, and we need them. However, society was built and is maintained by men. Men have protected this country for generations. Without them, women would struggle to survive, and society would fall apart. This is a fact. Men also need women. This isn't a post that criticizes women because they represent the other half of the equation. But men have been given a bad reputation and are not appreciated or supported by society today. I am a social worker, and I plan to become a therapist eventually, so I can advocate for men's mental health. Contrary to what many women believe, the way men are treated and portrayed in society today is horrible. I have witnessed some atrocious things said and done to men. What most women do not realize is that when men suffer, women also suffer. There is a troubling them against us narrative, and it hurts both genders. Story 26. In divorce, children are often presumed to go with the mother. This mindset in family courts can be harmful to children. Not all mothers are excellent caregivers simply because they are women. The designation of being the mother carries significant weight in the court system. It is extremely challenging for fathers to gain custody of their children after a divorce, unless the mother is unfit. This situation is sexist and unfair to both fathers and children. Story 27. Refusing to admit you are wrong. Many people engage in extensive mental gymnastics to avoid acknowledging any wrongdoing. Story 28. Racism and discrimination against any particular group is a serious issue. As a brown man who is often introverted, I have grown up in Australia with friends who praised Europe, stating that I would have a wonderful time there. I visited Germany, France, Italy, Belgium, and Spain as a tourist. However, I cannot forget how much discrimination I encountered during these travels. Upon arriving in Germany, which is part of the European Union, I found that despite the media's portrayal of diversity, most white Germans were quite cold. In contrast, Turkish and other people of color living in Germany were exceptionally friendly. The difference in demeanor was stark, with friendly faces versus unfriendly ones. I spent a few months learning basic German through a language app and attempted to buy water or snacks at various stores. On 3 occasions I was laughed at and people switched to English, remarking that I had a lot to learn. They were shocked when I clarified that I was a tourist and would be leaving soon. One time, a police officer stopped me for identification. He seemed surprised to discover that I was an Australian tourist and may have double-checked to ensure my passport was authentic. While in Rome, Italy, I attempted to purchase fridge magnets at a tourist shop, only to be confronted by an elderly woman who yelled at me in Italian. When I asked her what the issue was, she managed to express in broken English that I should go back as a refugee. I explained, "I'm a tourist," leaving her confused but still upset. I decided to take my business elsewhere. In Brugge, Belgium, I sought local chocolate and noticed that all the chocolate shops had white women serving behind the counters. After visiting 4 different shops, each with different selections, I observed a consistent pattern. Whenever a white person was in front of me, The staff engaged in friendly conversation, offered their services, and exchanged pleasantries. However, when it was my turn, smiles quickly vanished, expressions turned annoyed, and their tones changed entirely. One staff member even urged me to hurry because there was someone behind me. There was no genuine interaction, just a transactional exchange of money. During these experiences, I found myself questioning the behavior of the people I encountered. Spain stood out as the only country where locals treated me like a human being, resulting in zero negative reactions. To this day, Spanish and Latino people are among the friendliest individuals I encounter, and their positivity is genuinely overwhelming. In summary, my time in Europe was not enjoyable. I witnessed significant discrimination and observed different treatment of other minorities as well. If you are not white and travel through Europe, you will likely experience some form of discrimination. Am I okay? Yes. Am I physically fine? Yes. Did I ever feel threatened? No. However, discrimination is still discrimination. After researching the topic, I understand why many European countries have become more conservative. Poor immigration policies are to blame. It raises the question of why there is a preference for accepting men from radically different cultures, which even developing countries would avoid. As a result, brown individuals like myself, who are merely tourists, must endure mistreatment due to negative perceptions associated with certain refugees. Thank you, Europe, for that experience. Story 29. Women's mistreatment of men occurs while they demand that men do everything for them. This includes helping random women move and lift things, putting their groceries in their cars, assisting with carry-ons in overhead compartments on commercial flights, and defending women from men who may attack or harm them in public. Women are not entitled to anything from men. Story 30. Dating culture in television shows like Friends makes it seem normal to date several people each month, suggesting that this is what everyone should desire. Consequently, there is an urgency in society that implies individuals should engage in dating, and if they do not want to, something is deemed wrong with them. Love is perceived as a commodity, and participation in this marketing effort is encouraged. This mindset has fostered a mentality where nearly everyone is focused on one goal: finding a partner, placing it at the top of their priorities. As a result, individuals may find themselves settling, B, frustrated by a lack of progress, and C, feeling alienated for choosing not to date. In reality, if there were less societal pressure, people might feel more at ease to let relationships develop organically, whether they happen or not. Story 31. I don't know if it's like this everywhere, but here in Texas, everyone just laughs off dangerous driving. For example, some people say, "I drive 120 miles per hour in the rain. What's a blinker? Get out of my way." This attitude is reflected in the number of traffic fatalities, road rage incidents, and our insurance rates. Story 32. Fast food and most food in general contribute to unhealthy diets. Alcohol is also detrimental. Additionally, the presence of billionaires raises concerns. Story 33. Profits are prioritized above all else. Even individuals in lower socioeconomic classes argue that businesses should maximize their profits, even if it negatively impacts them directly. Story 34. Capitalism creates artificial scarcity. We have more empty homes than homeless individuals. We waste more food than is needed to feed everyone. This is a rebranding and repackaging of slavery as modern work. It is estimated that 90% of labor performed is unnecessary. Employment-based health coverage means that if you lose your job, you effectively lose your life. There are no worker protections. There are many more issues if you explore the theory. Story 35. The grind is unproductive and will lead to a short and miserable life. You weren't meant to chase wealth, but rather to prosper within your community and family. Man is enslaved by luxury and vanity. He forgets that happiness is found in the simplest things. Story 36. Phone addiction, internet addiction, and social media addiction have become prevalent issues in modern society. Until 20 years ago, it was not common to have a phone with you all the time. Being constantly connected has now become the norm. We all recognize that this lifestyle is not ideal, Yet it has become a normalized aspect of society, as developers excel at creating addictive experiences. Story 37. Drinking alcohol and not getting enough sleep can be detrimental to health. Alcohol is harmful, yet people often spend $700 for bottle service at clubs in the early hours as if it is an exciting experience. Story 38. Referring to American citizens as workers has a kind of Soviet-era vibe. We have gone from citizens to employees to workers, and I am pretty sure we will soon be referred to as human capital. Story 39. Statutory rape involving younger males. There is a double standard that people have regarding this issue. When an older man engages in sexual activity with a girl, he is often labeled as a pedophile and condemned. However, when an older woman engages in sexual activity with a boy, she rarely faces consequences. Instead, society often praises the boy and considers him fortunate, especially if the woman is attractive. It is concerning that society does not address this issue adequately. Even if the boy consents, it is still considered statutory rape because the adult woman should recognize that such behavior is unacceptable. Story 40. Pornography, alcohol, narcissistic individuals recording strangers for views, superficial privilege, obesity, and fat shaming. Story 41. Religion involves indoctrination. It often fails at fostering critical thinking skills and requires faith to accept concepts that are highly unlikely. This intense indoctrination at a young age makes individuals susceptible to accepting other falsehoods without question. Throughout history, this indoctrination has led people to commit horrific crimes against humanity. Story 42. The fact that men do not have bodily autonomy and can have part of their genitals removed as minors for cosmetic reasons is unacceptable. Circumcision should be banned. Story 43. Complacency. I caught up with a friend after 25 years. He is still talking about the same things in the same ways, still in his little high school and college bubble, still trying to be a cool kid, and it turns out so is everybody else in that group. It has been over 2 decades, and they are all still exactly the same as they were at 25. To me, that is not normal. To them, it is perfectly normal. I started reaching out to other groups I knew, and it was all the same. No personal growth. Nothing. It was a time capsule of sadness. I didn't know it was so prevalent in society. Story 44. Fake threats of violence or jokes about self-harm are not the most harmful, but they are not helpful in any way. Story 45. The way society works is entirely rigged by the wealthy to benefit their interests. This includes government, economics, and media. Story 46. Billionaires do not deserve their vast amounts of wealth. You can call me a communist or whatever you want, but once people accumulate a certain level of money, they no longer need more. There is only so much one can do. Story 47. I saw a cute-looking board game called Quest Kids today that said it was for kids ages 5 and above. It's basically Hero Quest, but the heroes are small children armed with bows and axes. That's some disturbing content right there, but it's prevalent in our media. We're desensitized to violence at this point. Story 48. Religion exploits money from the poor and sick. However, little can be done because voters support religion, and religious leaders are aligned with politicians. Story 49. Allowing the elite, wealthy, and powerful to govern the world is the root cause of all the issues mentioned in this post. Story 50. Religion is in no way normal. It is literally believing in space magic. Not to mention there are supposedly over 4,000 different religions. Even if it were real, that would mean thousands of them got it wrong. Story 51. Religion promotes religious thinking, faith instead of reason, belief instead of logic, dogma instead of wisdom, special treatment for chosen individuals instead of equal treatment under the law, and provides a justification to persecute others. While I acknowledge that much good is done in the name of religion, that good can exist without the corruption or abuse often associated with it. It is not an essential part of life. We don't need it. Story 52. Circumcision. Western society condemns the cutting off of parts of little girls as female genital mutilation while completely ignoring the cutting of parts off little boys. Whether from a left-leaning perspective of bodily autonomy or a right-leaning perspective that believes God makes no mistakes, it needs to stop. Before anyone claims it's not harmful, further research is necessary. Male circumcision leaves a permanent scar on the shaft and removes two essential mucous membranes, leading to the permanent drying out of the glands. There is no medical justification for this practice. We should start referring to it as male genital mutilation. Story 53. Dictators of currency and the Cantillon effect arise from masking unfunded obligations and liabilities. It is evident that the most potent weapon of an oppressor is the minds of the oppressed. It is time to wake up to the game they play. Have you ever wondered why a $5 gold coin is worth so much? Bonds fund the government, and taxes merely service the debt. There is a significant difference between monetary policy and fiscal policy. One drives wealth up and maintains it. We have been warned for hundreds of years and have fought wars to take the power of currency creation out of the hands of international bankers and oligarchs. Whomever controls the volume of currency, regardless of the country, is the absolute master of commerce and industry. Story 54. I completely agree. There is a lot of valuable information about this barbaric practice. I would add that it is often practically forced on many young parents as the normal and expected thing to do. I have friends who decided not to circumcise and were asked over 10 times about having this procedure done to their infant. Another friend told me their first child was circumcised without them even being asked, so they assumed it was a mandatory procedure. They were upset after they started researching it. The non-consensual removal of infant penile skin is a billion-dollar industry, especially when you consider its use in the cosmetics industry. There is a vested interest in maintaining this lucrative practice since those being harmed cannot stop it. Story 55. Casual sex. On a superficial level, it has been shown to lead to feelings of depression and low self-esteem in women, especially. It carries risks of sexually transmitted diseases and unwanted pregnancy, but only 1 out of 10 women orgasm from casual sex. There is little reason for women to partake in casual sex since they bear most of the risks and gain very little in return. Yet society tells women that the sexual revolution has given them freedom when, in reality, it has primarily benefited a small percentage of men, providing them with more sexual partners and no positive outcomes for anyone else. Research has consistently shown that children who grow up with a single mother, not divorced or widowed, but single at the time of pregnancy, have worse outcomes than those raised in other family structures. 75% of men in jail in the United States grew up with a single mother. Women and girls who have to raise children alone have a much lower chance of realizing their full potential. Women who have had an abortion are significantly more likely to attempt suicide. If you mention that abortion has negative side effects, you face harsh criticism, but that does not solve the problem. When hundreds of millions of people engage in casual sex, many children are born into poverty without a father, millions contract severe diseases, and society's mental health deteriorates. All of this occurs so that some men have easier access to someone for sexual gratification. Story 56. Smoking, vaping, and especially heat-not-burned tobacco products are prevalent in my country. Many people feel good about using them because they believe they are not as harmful as traditional cigarettes. Additionally, the use of these products can lead to unpleasant breath. Story 57. Regime change and policing other nations is destroying our economy and our credibility worldwide. Story 58. The idea of a monetary economy instead of a resource-based economy, and the ownership of it instead of for a common goal. Story 59. Bit of a long rant, but in my opinion, these few things are the biggest corrosive agents of society. Lack of proper communication, or more specifically for today's era, the fear that guides most relationships, platonic or romantic, of thinking, what if you speak your mind? Social media and the virtually guaranteed anonymity of the internet have ensured this communication gap among genders and across age groups only increases, along with the usual manipulation on gender-specific or social issues, which is why we have the rise of certain online communities and radical perspectives. People are insecure about themselves and opening up because everything is seen as a potential opportunity to seek more attention online, which is why we have a brewing loneliness crisis. Why would anyone trust the person in front of them if their personal issues and intimate thoughts will be plastered all over social media by the next week? Personal responsibility is becoming a major issue for people. We are quick to blame negative habits on everything else but not take the time to introspect. The whole algorithm showing me negative or divisive content is a byproduct of what you as an individual choose to see and follow. Changing this, or better yet, going on a detox, will lift this burden off your shoulders and seriously improve your mental health. Lastly, there is the urge to continuously scroll through negative content. Negativity and controversy sell well to people nowadays since we've been convinced that stability and having everything sorted out are big negatives and that we need drama, leading to an overstimulation of the mind over issues that are often blown out of proportion or irrelevant. Story 60. The world's power structure and all it invites into the mix. We are not humans as intended. Victim and oppressor alike, we just let it happen, and the planet and people are compromised to no end. We could be an advanced culture that creates perpetual life never imagined. Story 61. Treating people as lesser because they are not white, heterosexual, property-owning, wealthy males. Story 62. I am truly troubled by the treatment the French pole vaulter has been receiving in the news regarding his anatomy. He has been oversexualized, and I believe that if it had been a woman's body, this would not have occurred. Instead of focusing on his athletic abilities, all anyone seems to discuss is the size of his anatomy. Story 63. Posh people spoil children. A fair race for everyone with unequal outcomes based on service to society may seem boring, but it is the answer to creating a good society. Story 64. Emotional neglect is one of the worst things you can do to your child. As long as you don't hit them, nobody seems to care. It's increasingly prevalent these days, and it's quite disheartening. Story 65. Added sugar. Food companies are permitted to include psychoactive stimulants in our food to create a chemical dependency, encouraging increased purchases. Story 66. Divorce after having children, excluding specific cases of addiction, abuse, and infidelity, negatively affects families and communities. It sets children up to underperform, which, when viewed across society, results in significant harm for everyone. Story 67. Buying cigarettes and alcohol for underage kids is unacceptable. I honestly can say I dislike every adult who agreed to buy me cigarettes when I was 14 or 15 years old. Now I find it hard to quit. Story 68. Ignorance of technology. Education has been slow to integrate technology as a standard part of the curriculum, similar to subjects like English, science, and mathematics. This lack of education leads individuals to be easily deceived and denied access to a fulfilling life. Many processes now require filling out online forms. However, the shift to a paperless environment means that personal information is more vulnerable to being leaked and shared. In such cases, individuals may not only be unaware of how to recover their identity but may also be oblivious to the fact that it has been compromised. Story 69. Socially distancing yourself from people who commit social mistakes or are annoying, instead of telling them what they did wrong, may seem easier. I understand that many people become defensive and don't make it easy to address these issues. However, most individuals are willing to make reasonable changes. They just may not realize what they are doing wrong. Because many of us tend to avoid conflict, we often pass the problem on to someone else, resulting in a loss for everyone involved. Story 70. Parental rights are leading children into crippled, ruined lives. Children are not property for anyone to do whatever they want with. And this school voucher system? That's the opposite of the direction we need to be taking. We should focus on public schooling from early education through college, with equal funding for all. Story 71. Men being sexually abused by women, especially young men or boys, seriously affects them. Story 72. Political figures are making a mockery of something that should be treated with respect and dignity and taken seriously. It's an important role after all. Story 73. No-fault divorces, or divorces based on personal unhappiness, can be concerning. Unless there are extreme circumstances such as infidelity, physical abuse, or financial abuse, one should not be able to simply exit a lifelong commitment. It is important to work through challenges. Both individuals are adults and should address their issues together. Story 74. Divorce can be acceptable when you recognize your unhappiness. You made commitments to love each other until death. Society is now leading people to believe it's acceptable to leave when they are unhappy, rather than working through challenges with the person they love. A strong marriage foundation is not built on selfishness. Story 75. Processed foods, chemical additives, preservatives, and nitrites, along with seed and partially hydrogenated oils, are slowly harming us in the United States. This situation needs to be addressed. Story 76. We will look back in 20 years and realize that we should have thought of them in the same way we do tobacco companies. Story 77. Religion causes more problems than it solves. Its collective responsibility for some truly horrendous crimes over the centuries cannot be overlooked. Story 78. Climate change will destroy civilization and the ability of most humans to survive, if we remain as a species at all. There is discussion about taking action, but emissions continue to rise. New wells are still being exploited. There is no significant change. Story 79. The impact of violence. The entertainment industry never hesitates to show war, killing, and violence in television, movies, and all types of media. Yet it always hesitates to show affection, sex, love, and, God forbid, nudity or a fully naked man. However, pornography is a multi-billion-dollar, incredibly addictive and powerful industry that everyone on the planet has access to on a daily basis. So, pornographic content featuring male anatomy is acceptable as long as everyone participates in watching it, while no one openly discusses it. But non-sexualized nudity is considered inappropriate. Seeing a nude man's body changing clothes in a movie or on television is not acceptable. The hypocrisy is astounding. The normalization of male circumcision is concerning. We are a society that values consent on every level. Bodily autonomy is important for women's rights and freedom. However, when discussing the consent of a man who has half of the nerve endings of his penis removed as an infant during a circumcision, often without anesthesia or his consent, people react vehemently, even fellow men, to dismiss the issue, claiming it isn't a big deal. What? Men don't even support their own in this argument. If you are circumcised and don't think it's significant, ask any man who has spent years on foreskin restoration and has fully restored their foreskin. Yes, it's a significant issue. Many are unaware of what was taken from them. It's a huge deal. You were robbed, and you are defending those who took from you. Wake up. Story 80. Discrimination based on gender, race, and religion is a major reason why many people have been killed over time, and it continues to persist. Story 81. The inability or unwillingness to be kind and considerate of others. Misogynistic individuals. People who struggle to control their compulsive behaviors. Selfish attitudes. Immaturity. Entitlement attitudes. Story 82. Being uneducated as a normal person and holding harmful beliefs that people choose to ignore for the sake of comfort. Story 83. Crocs and hey dudes, or people wearing Disney or similarly branded pajamas in public as acceptable clothing. Story 84. Pornography and erotic novels, particularly how both can warp expectations of reality. Casual sex and sex work. Sugar consumption. High carbohydrate diet combined with a sedentary lifestyle, including desk jobs. The normalization of children sitting at a desk for 5 hours a day, 5 days a week, for 40 weeks a year. Historically, children would engage in apprenticeships rather than desk work. Misandry and devaluation of men's worth. Liberalism, an unsustainable belief in individualism that erodes the social bonds necessary for a thriving society, promoting self-gratification and neglecting the downstream effects on the community. Equality of outcomes, whether through feminism or communism, disregards the necessity for societal diversity, which evolution has intentionally maintained. Story 85. I believe that if you have closely observed anything, including John Oliver over the years, you would realize there is nothing harmful that we accept as normal in society. Story 86. Alcohol is legal. Marijuana is often considered a gateway drug. I have never been in a fight over marijuana or stolen anyone's car thinking it was funny. I woke up with flashbacks of hanging from the 10th floor. I woke up with a tattoo gun, but I did not get a tattoo. 3 of my friends have stick figure tattoos with top hats. I once spilled liquid on my PlayStation 3 that my girlfriend bought me on launch. I never told her, but I regret that. I am not sure what steroids do to you, but my frenemy was with her a week after we broke up, letting her cry on him when she was drunk, which seemed to be a way of boosting his ego. I was bullied with boxing gloves, throwing haymakers because I reluctantly agreed to spar. He set the pace, showing off. I mean, I wouldn't buy a ticket to a circus and expect trapeze artists to come naturally. If I had not stayed out of the loop for 8 years, I would have likely ended up in jail because I would have probably gotten drunk and knocked him out again. Some kind of Reservoir Dogs dance would have occurred. When I used to drink, that would have been funny. I am going to listen to Stuck in the Middle with You in a moment, but that's just because it's a classic. Story 87, Driving. If any other avenue had this little regard for safety, the government would shut it down immediately. Yet somehow, drivers can be almost as unsafe as they want, and more often than not, they get away with it. Story 88. Alcohol is worse than some drugs from what I have read, yet those drugs are illegal as they should be in my opinion, while alcohol is not. I believe the downfall or lack of success in many countries, including Baltic and Slavic countries as well as the United Kingdom and Ireland, can be partially attributed to their high rates of alcoholism. Story 89. In India, everything that is harmful is considered normal to an extent. Phrases like chelo, kuch nahi hota, aisa to hota rehta hai, and hum bhi kiya hai exemplify this mentality. Story 90. Alcohol, if it were invented today, would not be legal for consumption and would only be used as medicine or as a solvent. Story 91. I would assume it is either alcohol consumption, which is generally expected, or sleep deprivation, which seems to be actively encouraged. Story 92. Organized religion. The damage caused by mainstream religion far outweighs the positives, which are sadly becoming less predicated upon unconditional love and understanding. These belief systems alienate, shame, and confuse those who question them. Anyone who does not adhere to their archaic and reductive principles is ostracized and told they are the problem and must repent to be right with God. If the God they describe actually existed, it would not care about our actions as humans because we were given free will. If I am to believe that this God is benevolent and all-loving, then everything written in the Old Testament and other religious texts directly contradicts the idea of an all-loving and benevolent creator. If there is a God, it does not care. If it cared and were this omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent being, then children would not be sold off as child brides and sex slaves. There would be no murders in the name of this supposed creator, and most importantly, there would be no mystery regarding the intentions and purposes of a creator with those attributes. I would much rather trust that I am the sole decider of my own fate and that the power to effect positive change is in my hands alone. Reality is shaped by the mind and my experience. Change your mind for the better, and the world will reflect those changes in ways that may be difficult to discern at first. However, with an objective and fearless viewpoint, these changes will become apparent, and one will see that everything truly is connected in ways so subtle that only the person perceiving them would understand. Story 93. Overarching power structures are depriving people of their agency and wealth while alienating them from the products of their lives. This reflects the nature of large-scale society. Story 94. Xenophobia. The most means the most. Xenophobia keeps humans isolated from each other for irrational reasons. Story 95. Not researching topics independently and developing an informed opinion is a common issue. Many people today rely on media reports about various situations and quickly adopt those perspectives. Every issue has its pros and cons, but it is more beneficial to educate yourself before criticizing someone with a different opinion or viewpoint. We are all human. Story 96. Hierarchy. The oldest evidence of it is single-digit percentages of our 300,000-year history. Marriage is only half as old as that, by the way. Story 97. Pornography. Although pornography is not clinically recognized as an addiction, it has a negative impact on many individuals, making it a societal norm. One person once said, "Your first experience with pornography is not as an adult. It often occurs when you are young. Our minds trick us into thinking it is normal. We unknowingly seek that initial high we felt when we first encountered pornography as children. Since men discuss it so openly, it has become normalized. Pornography promotes sexual violence and the dehumanization of others. This harmful perspective affects victims of trafficking, as their abuse is normalized as a standard treatment of women in sexual contexts. Before you decide to watch pornography, consider how long you typically engage with it and whether the content has progressively shifted to something you didn't think you would have watched years ago. I have struggled with pornography addiction. It ruined my 6-year relationship with someone I considered my soulmate, negatively impacted my social life, and affected my productivity at work. At one point, it consumed my thoughts, and I would sneak away to the bathroom at work for a quick release. I am currently seeing a therapist and psychiatrist and have installed a pornography blocker on my phone. I have been 50 days clean, and my mind has become much clearer. If you need more information on how to quit or get started, feel free to reach out. I am willing to help. Story 98. The good guys versus bad guys rhetoric is harmful because it kills empathy and justifies abuse. Of course, there are truly good and admirable people and some extremely twisted ones, but the vast majority of people are in between. When you see someone being demonized, you should always remember they are not a demon. If you see someone being praised as a saint, you should always remember they are not a saint. It becomes even worse when this perspective is applied to groups, as people instinctively see their own group as the good guys and others as the bad guys. Story 99. Cheating should be viewed as a serious issue. Can ruin lives, families, and relationships. Once it occurs, life changes permanently, and individuals may become distrustful of others. Story 100. Everyone has the right to be involved in everything, even in matters where they have no vested interest, for the sake of inclusion. Story 101. Where I live, excessive drinking is seen as normal. Men who act like immature young adults from bad horror movies are also common here. I mean men in their 50s who are married and have their own children, yet they become defensive if you dare to approach their daughters. Story 102. Driving and constructing roads everywhere. Assuming everything functions during development and without injury, humans are designed for walking. Story 103. Believing in rumors and old tales and continuing to uphold them today, despite the abundance of evidence that shows they are false. Story 104. Misandry is prevalent in our society, and unfortunately, people frequently deflect from it. This is why I sometimes feel that the male gender role should never have been created, as it contributes to delusions akin to ignorance. This allows individuals to treat men poorly, and the dismissive attitudes only exacerbate the issue. It is truly frustrating. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.